art school, but I think that's one of the problems with art school is that everyone sort of drinks the Kool-Aid, and then there's sort of a homogenous element to how the art looks. So, I really respect people who've gone through that classical training and who can sort of pull back and refocus their efforts that way.
I didn't know they were going to have Kool-Aid at art school, so that's how I stayed in.
Yeah,
That was super tasty.
Should we get going?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Let's do it. All right. Hey, guys, this is Waiting to Dry. I'm Josh Lawyer. We have a special guest host today,
Yeah.
Leon Loucheur.
Greetings.
And then our guest today is Steve Kim. Kim, right?
Yeah, Kim.
I'm so bad at names. I'm like, because when I was typing in your Instagram, I'm like, it has the CO at the end. I was like, what is the CO? Have I been getting your name wrong this entire time? But
Yeah.
Steve Kim. Boom. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for inviting.
Hell yeah. Steve Kim, you took a little trip. What is it, like a 15-minute drive to get here?
Yeah. Arizona, like about 600, 700 miles. Yeah.
That's what you drove today?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we drove from Oxford, Mississippi, so for 4 nights, 4 days, averaging about 600-700 miles.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Can I do something real quick?
Sure.
It's because if I talk like this and then if I pull it back just a little bit, you hear how like my voice just changes so much.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I just gotta get used to like kissing the mic.
Yeah, keep it close.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just get intimate.
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly.
All right.
Just know that John Wentz has also kissed that mic.
All the more reason to get closer.
Yeah.
Okay.
That mic gets around.
It does, huh?
Okay.
But yeah. Sorry about that. I don't know how much of that's gonna get edited out, but a good chunk of it. So back to the trip. You and your girlfriend have been traveling across the country.
Yeah. It's mostly because I have a show at No Wave this Saturday, and I'm gonna work on a mural there too. And so we're driving from Mississippi to here, and then back down to LA tomorrow, and then start working on the mural. I've never done a mural,
Nice.
so
That's awesome.
we'll see how that goes.
Ooh, what is the medium
Wow.
you're going to be using?
House paint.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Nice.
usually if I paint, I usually paint in watercolor or oil, but sometimes acrylic.
Yeah.
Now, what's your plan for the mural? I mean, you're going to try and sort of recreate something you typically do in a different medium, or?
Yeah, so all the paintings in the show are like large oil paintings,
Mm-hmm.
6 by 7 feet, about 6 of them, and they're all based on horror films, and one in particular called Possession. It's, this really weird, trippy horror movie.
Are you a
And-
big
but-
horror movie buff?
Kind of like,
Okay.
yeah, kind of. But this movie, I really liked it because it's about this couple that are kind of insane, and they love each other but hate each other, kind of stuff. And originally, I had done all the paintings in Detroit for a residency, and I was in Detroit, and I remembered watching this movie called It Follows, set in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking, and then I realized there's all these other movies set in Detroit, horror movies.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, okay, I'll do something with that. Just keep it like regional or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But I just ended up looking through a lot of movies, and then remembering this movie called Possession. It's an old movie, 1981 or something, and it has this weird quality where when I scrub through the footage, it's like everything is something I want to paint.
Yeah.
Huh.
Whereas like the original kind of the original idea I had, or the original movie I had, It Follows, which is an amazing horror flick.
Mm-hmm.
I scrubbed through the whole thing and I couldn't find anything. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography is amazing,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, I just couldn't find anything.
What is it
Wow.
you're looking for when you're going through this?
A lot of the paintings, I like a lot when within the paintings the figures interact with one another in one way, like even if it's just like a simple overlap, but if they're intertwined or they're
I see.
enmeshed somehow, and then working with that, So when I was doing a lot of painting in grad school, I worked with family photos of a lot with my nephews and nieces because they're always being held and
Right.
and just like hugging their
see.
parents or whatever, and it's just fun for me to work with them together. That was like my first real painting I felt was basically my nephew being held up, and you could see my nephew. I mean, the nephew in the photo, but then the lady holding him, and you could see the back of her head. I just kind of combined the two,
Yeah.
and it was just one of those like little painterly things, when you're. I guess I was a student then, but just seemed like impactful. And I was like, oh, okay, this is finally something that I want to explore or
Wow, that's
something
cool.
like that. Yeah.
Nice. And then, so you got inspired by this horror film, and do you know who the director is, by any chance?
Oh,
Have you heard of this movie?
And I haven't. I'm not a
It's,
big horror buff.
It's really hard to pronounce. It's like Czech or something.
Okay.
It's got a lot of weird letters in it. But yeah,
Guess people can Google it.
yeah, it's called Possession, and the show's called Possession too because I ended up doing 4 or 5 pieces based on that movie, and so the mural is we're gonna get a bunch of screen grabs from the film that I like, because I was looking at it again and I found like new material,
Right.
like even more screenshots that I want to work from, and then it's gonna wrap around the mural somehow.
That's
So,
cool.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the other participating artists are all sort of drawing from the same source on this, or
Oh, it's a solo show.
it is solo.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I
So,
see.
yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. I know Leon. You've dipped your toes into the mural.
Some, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Are you gonna have are you gonna have help there, or
Well, my girlfriend will help, like with
Yeah.
lay-in and drawing and
Nice.
Nice.
stuff, and then and just kind of like her work is really collagey and stuff, so I think it's gonna help a lot actually.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So I don't know. I've never done one, so
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
How big's the wall? Sorry.
okay.
It's not huge. It's each wall is 8 by 8 feet, but there's if you count the inside, if we do the inside as well, so that would be 8 times 6
I
or
see.
8
Okay.
by 8 by 6.
You can have your hands full. That's a good space. I mean, it's doable.
Yeah.
I recommend. Man, I love this Purdy 1/2-inch trim brush, like Purdy brand for
Yeah,
painting
yeah, I've seen
murals.
that, yeah.
Oh man,
Like,
that
is it
brush-
like angled or something?
it is. Yeah, and it loads real heavy, and you can just really paint long lines with it and fill with this. Real versatile.
Okay, yeah, I'll check that out. Yeah.
That's that's cool. I've never actually done a mural except for like back in my day. I did a little dibble dabbling in like the spray painting world, and I don't know if that's considered mural stuff, but that's the largest I've ever painted. But I always think murals are pretty intimidating in general, especially when you're an artist. You want to convey like your artwork on a large form, and you don't. I don't know. For me, I don't paint large. I don't know how big your paintings usually are, if they're on the larger scale or not. Are they?
You do paint some pretty big pieces, right? I mean,
Yeah, so all throughout grad school, it was, I think, the largest was maybe 11 feet wide or 9 feet
okay.
wide, and so around
Oh, yeah.
6, 7
wow.
feet-ish. But after school and stuff like that, I had to scale things down a bit. No more of that student loan funny money, and I scaled way down. So
Yeah.
basically, anything that could fit in my backpack. And I just wanted to do studies, get back into drawing, and so I started to do portraits based on like Tumblr followers back when like internet social stuff was
Right.
like, ooh, wow, this is an idea, right?
Yeah.
I got it. And it was a good kind of like excuse to just spend time drawing. And I thought I was going to do studies, but then I realized that I wanted to do something else with those faces that I was drawing, and so that's where like a lot of those kind of like disembodied portraits are coming from.
I see.
They all start like all my work start out as pretty accurate representational figure drawings or portraits, and then after I have everything drawn out,
And you lay that in just with like a regular pencil?
in graphite first, yeah, and pretty detailed. Like I really get in there.
You use color pencil sometimes too, right?
Yeah, so I start with graphite as a lay-in, and then essentially redraw it in the colored pencil.
Oh, I see.
Something about the colored pencil just really like it's such a small thing that I just had them laying around because of school for perspective class. You have to use different colors for perspective lines so you don't get confused.
I see.
Right.
And then the one it only comes in two colors, and that's why they're all blue because the red isn't that great.
Right.
But it just has a great feel, and it feels like straight. It's a mechanical pencil lead, but it feels strangely like painterly when I work in it.
Yeah, I've used that a lot. I was doing that a lot previous to like I painted oil now, but for like the last like I don't know 7 years before that, I used those like blue and red lead pencil.
Yeah, the Pentel. Yeah.
And I was always like I have tons of now, and I have like other colors that I bought that are 07 size from like Japan or something.
Yeah.
They have like a really cool pink that I used to use, that I would use in a turquoise kind of like color that I was like really hooked on, but then I stopped.
Right. No, it's funny because I was in the same kind of like place, colored pencil place, because I was like trying to find other leads, but they didn't have the same feel. But recently I found some recent different colors on Amazon. It's like now it's like now I have 10 different colors. I don't know what to do. Right.
Too many choices.
Yeah, you might be in the same boat as me because I just found them and then I played with them and I was like, this is amazing. And then I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of over it now.
Yeah.
So hopefully not though. So you do that and you do like a lot of washes and stuff. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So everything, almost all the work comes out of those initial portraits. So once I had the portraits, I wanted to kind of turn them into some like finished works for myself. And then I looked at those, and I also needed to make some money. And I was like, well, they had like an illustrative quality, and especially if I scanned them in and color them digitally. And so, and so then I Googled that. Photoshop, like I've always used Photoshop for photo stuff, never for digital art. But just the color pencil drawings, I think, in a lot of ways, kind of come to life more in the digital pieces because I can max out the contrast, play with things, and so that's where the washes come in.
Yeah.
So the first series was all like flat digital color, like a little lazy or tired or something, and so I started doing quick watercolor and gouache washes as a to add an extra layer on top of the drawing and combine it in Photoshop, and then that's where some of those brushy, textury kind of effects come in.
I didn't even know that was digital.
Right. Yeah. So I get a lot of like comments about like which medium is this or things like that. It's like it's a long story.
Now you can just point them this direction.
That's right.
Yeah. So those any drawings that they max out at maybe 11 by 14, 14 by 17.
Okay.
Right.
They're very, very small. Very, very small.
So how much? You said you did a lot of drawing after graduate school. How much drawing and studies did you do as part of your formal education, or were you mostly painting large-scale oil paintings?
Well, I went to Art Center, and they have a pretty, semi-rigorous, I guess, quasi-rigorous drawing program, figure drawing program. Like the idea is like the first 4 terms or semesters is your foundation, etc. But I came in to Art Center knowing how to draw already, especially in terms of like teenage magazine photocopy stuff, right?
Right.
So figure drawing and stuff like that came pretty quickly. Yeah, and the oil painting, I did a lot of that in junior college.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I bummed
That's
around
cool.
junior college for
That's the way to
too
go.
many semesters.
Yeah, I think junior college is the best education for the money, probably, right?
Probably. Well, for the money, yeah. If you can find a good, because it's like all these schools are about like, and then who your instructors are, and how they ended up getting their position is like it's funky stuff, and you might end up in a JC with a super cool, like Pasadena City College has like super cool, super good instructors for like back then like $7 a unit.
That's awesome. A lot of bang.
For sure.
And so you grew up in LA, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was born in Korea, but I immigrated here when I was 2.
Okay.
Mm.
So technically, first generation, I guess, if you're not born here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the most Americanized, obviously. Yeah,
Right.
my
Right.
mom and my whole family are more Korean.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah, and
Is th-
yeah.
is there some do they understand the artist path?
No, I mean they did my mom especially, because for her the path was Disney always
Uh-huh.
Oh,
and
I see.
Pixar, right?
Right.
It's
Uh-huh.
just like, oh, look at the salaries that
Right.
Yeah.
that these animators
Yeah.
animators make, and I'm like, yeah, mom, those are. I mean, that's awesome. It really is, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes I look at that stuff, I'm like, why can't I like make concept art or something,
Right.
right? Because I like all that stuff,
Yeah.
anime and video games and things like that.
Mhm.
But I'm just not,
Yeah.
for the moment at least.
I think
Right.
that's pretty common that parents are supportive of you pursuing an art career, but maybe don't really understand the choices you make as a fine artist. Especially, like my dad is always trying to get me to paint like Western scenes. He wants me
Oh,
to
right,
paint like
yeah.
cowboys and
Yeah,
shit like that.
showing
you
you
know?
like maybe clippings of like, hey, look at
He
this
does.
painting.
He does. He
Son.
does. Son, why are you painting these things? No one wants to buy that, you know?
This cowboy looks so cool.
Yeah,
Don't you want to be cool?
exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's totally my mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, totally. And not only that, but then you're like, yeah, that is cool, but that's not what I want to paint.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other issue is like we always bring it up, but it's kind of like you're as an artist. At least for me, I always go towards what I like enjoy doing and what I tend to do and what like I'm drawn to. Like for me personally, like I like a ton of different artwork, but for me personally, like getting into the details of certain areas, I really get like, I really enjoy those parts of painting. So I embrace that where, I don't, even though I enjoy like concept art or like anything like that, I think it's amazing what they do. That's not how my brain works,
Yeah.
kind of. I don't know.
Yeah. You got to do you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Is that kind of the reason why you went this route? Like, I don't know if you ever like have a sketchbook you haven't shown anyone that's just like superheroes and cool things like that.
No. Even though I can't really keep a sketchbook for whatever reason. But the reason I wanted to go to art center in the first place was for concept art. It was like my
Oh,
original
really?
plan. I hung out on all the forums and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And
Yeah.
Right.
but like it was this weird thing where I would like browse everything, like the whole like and participate and stuff like that, but never actually create anything.
Uh-huh.
I would just post my like weird drawings and paintings that had really no place in that forum.
Yeah. So what did your early drawings look like? Subject wise, like what were you drawn to create when you first got started?
Oh, like as a kid, or
Well, I guess both, but as you started to develop your craft. a little
right?
bit
Yeah.
more.
So I guess it really started picking up a little bit in junior college, but I would say around the third semester of art center, where we because to that point you do a lot of figure drawing and life painting.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this one class called back then drawing concepts, and the basic idea is like the model comes in, you draw or whatever, and
Right.
you use that reference to create something, whatever, spooky or cool or whatever.
Right.
And I realized I was already doing stuff like that, where I would draw the figure and be into that, but at some point just get kind of bored of it
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like disillusioned and kind of unhappy. I was really just always unhappy.
Yeah.
And so I made like a lot of I wish I had better images, but a lot of like kind of like sort of cringy, creepy, dark
Okay.
stuff,
All right.
very
Right.
brooding, melancholy work.
I see.
Right.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
like beneath that is still, I think, interesting visual, creative
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
choices that I wish I still had the work personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have it anymore?
Yeah, no.
No, you got rid of it.
Do you have any photographs of it at all?
I could Google it. Google's like my second bad memory.
That's definitely like a common theme behind artists too. Is like the dark brooding, like
For sure.
when you're a younger person, you usually kind of have those like emotional swings where you're like the world's against me or something like that,
Right.
and it kind of plays out through art a lot of times. I find. I mean, I was definitely doing some dark and like
Oh yeah.
sad and whatever.
Everyone has their DeviantArt phase, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
If you dig deep enough.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's a good motivator when you're young, though.
Yeah. Every once in a while, because my sketchbooks are that for me. Like they're like my history books of myself. So I get to go through and I have like high school sketchbooks and things like that.
Oh, nice.
And some of the stuff is like bad, dark artwork with like bad poetry attached to it.
I was just going to bring that up, man. Old poetry.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That's painful, man. I met up with a friend that I hadn't seen, this girl that I was in love with in high school. I hadn't seen her in like 25 years. And she's like, I still saved this poem you wrote. Do you want to hear it? I was like, hell no.
Yeah. Like, can we burn it? Yeah. Yeah, that's cool though. So, but your dark stuff is on Google somewhere?
Like if you like search hard enough, yeah.
People are out there just like,
No, we're gonna find it.
Or just bad like gallery photos, you know.
yeah,
Bad haircuts and things like that.
for sure. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. So what year did you graduate from graduate school?
2009 or 10,
Nice.
and undergrad was 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, so a while back.
What's the difference between graduate school and undergrad for an art degree?
A few different things for me. The big one was for undergrad, I was in the illustration program.
I see.
And for grad school, it was just grad school studio art, which is very like fine art with a capital F kind of thing.
They just let you do your thing basically at that point. Huh?
Yeah, and there's just like a different culture. There's parts of that within the fine art undergrad program at Art Center, but I wasn't a part of that. I only took a couple classes, and that's actually what led me to painting and art more, because I really didn't know anything about fine art or art, really, just internet stuff. And then I took one class, and then it was like this one instructor that just like the way he talked about art made me realize that I cared more about than what I was getting in the illustration program.
Yeah,
Right.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, there's definitely an illustrative part to your artwork as well. Like I see that. I mean, it's definitely like little hints of it there. I feel like it's definitely on the finer arts side, but there's like the color pencil stuff and all that stuff is very like some line work and all that kind of stuff is which I enjoy. But
I like that too.
Yeah. So that all goes into my illustration portfolio, and those are the pieces that I send to art directors and things like that. Everything goes onto Instagram, but for the commercial work, I keep it a certain workflow that I know. Like I don't have to like stretch a canvas when he emails me or whatever. Yeah. So I can like, okay, I got sketches, can throw it in Photoshop. The turnaround. It was about like you were saying earlier, like trying to find like a process or something where you can have fun, right? So deadlines are pretty stressful. So a lot, I was in the illustration program, but not really, because I was painting and stuff.
Right.
So when I decided to do illustrations as a job, I had to figure out like from scratch, like how did I want to go about this?
Right.
And it made me realize I hadn't thought of these things though that much during school, and including grad school.
Yeah.
So grad school, it's just like it's not all that really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you go back and do it again if you?
No. But this is like pre-internet, pre-Google, pre-YouTubes.
Right.
I'm learning so many like crazy things on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Not even art related.
Yeah.
How to pack a bag like a soldier.
Yeah.
It's all about rolling stuff up.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That probably came in super handy.
But the thing that I would say that is maybe a little weird is I would go back even before Art Center and undergrad, and even before high school. Like basically when at whatever point I was lucid and I could read and write and do basic arithmetic, like whatever my math level is now, right? Which is not very high, but I get by. And honestly, strike out on my own like at that point, which for me was when I was around 11, because I just remember wanting to make art and wanting this to be a part of my life, and kind of giving myself this pep talk, like, okay, Steve, we're gonna do this for real.
Yeah.
And I remember everything about that memory because I was at my mom's shop where it was like nighttime. We're walking back to the parking lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, and so it's just a super vivid memory, but that's nice and all, but the reality is then you go to school and you're influenced by your peers and the broader culture and things like that, and you lose your way.
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah,
that's cool. I mean, so you're going back to this 11-year-old kid and trying to like break down what his mental state was and figuring out what drove him to do what he was doing and what he wanted to do. Kind of, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool.
Because after grad school, it's just like, because when you're in school, I mean, when even before you're in school, you're sold on this idea of what school represents and what it'll do for you, even if they don't. I mean, they'll say a lot of like weird things and like, 99% of our students get blah blah blah.
Right.
But even if they don't say it explicitly, there's this implicit kind of cultural kind of like, it's just very like culturally relevant.
Right.
And I bought in. I railed against it and I bought into it at the same time. So there's always this conflict.
I feel like that's the case with everybody I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people that go to art school, they're deeply influenced by it, but they're also sort of continually rebelling against it. I mean, that seems to be a theme that I keep hearing people say.
Yeah, for sure. And if not that, then just like dropping out after the first semester,
right.
Yeah,
or things like that. Yeah, the smart ones, I would say.
Yeah.
Right?
Before you rack up
They're
all that
driving
debt.
the Lambos now.
Yeah. I dropped out the day before I was supposed to start.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like, I quit. They were like, okay.
Was there a reason, a specific?
I was talking to like some people that were going to school at the time, the Academy of Arts, and they kind of like seemed like they were pointing me away from it, and they were like, you can do it, just like you seem like you're really, really driven and like you paint and draw a lot, just like keep doing that and don't get the debt. And I was like,
yeah, the debt's a big factor, I think.
And so I just didn't, and I called them up and said like, I don't want any, or they said I can't, all the money I put towards it is lost. And I was like, that's fine, bye. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy about that. But it's cool to kind of hear. I don't know if Sergio will listen to this, but if he does, we've been going back and forth about the art school.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to say, suck it, Sergio.
Is he pro school?
Yeah, more so.
Yeah, I mean, he's I think he's very like the academic like arena. He does well in that. Like he enjoys it.
But isn't that more like atelier, like workshop kind of thing?
Yeah, I think he probably did great in that too. I think just like I think he enjoys just the school atmosphere.
Right, yeah. Oh, that is nice. I mean, yeah, if you like people. I guess people are okay.
Yeah, they're all right.
Sometimes.
I know a couple.
I'm one.
That's all you need.
I'm a people.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yep.
Cool. So, so after you graduated and now you're in this mindset, when you think back at like the 11-year-old you, do you think, is there like some naive notion of, do you ever like, because I always think back about like how almost like I didn't understand, I just knew I was going in like this direct, like I was like, I want to be an artist, but now that I'm older, I'm like, I had no idea what that meant. I just knew. So I just think of myself as like this naive kid who didn't know how much work went into it, outside of putting paint on things.
I mean, yeah. I mean, forever. I mean, for sure. That kind of like innocent, kind of naive quality.
Mm-hmm.
But also like especially as I was getting older, within like school and just like not being interested in anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was just I was in a way like backed into a corner. I didn't know what else I was gonna do.
Right.
And how to do it, right? Because there's no social networking.
Right.
I didn't even know what like fine art was,
Mm-hmm.
Did your parents
so school just becomes this like kind of oh, this is what I do. I don't know what to do. This is what I do.
The next
What should I
step.
do? Teacher, etc.
Were you exposed to going to museums and stuff like that when you were a kid, or did you see cool art or anything?
Just internet stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Or like or comic books, things like that, magazines. My family's more like working class, blue collar kind of thing. So there isn't that like, son, let's go to the Met and the opera and whatever.
I see.
Like sometimes when I like hear people's conversations with their parents, it's like the conversation is so nuanced and kind of advanced. It really makes me feel like, oh man, that's a crazy kind of parent. Like I love my mom obviously, but it's like, how do I get one of those too?
Yeah. My wife's dad and stepmom, they live in Manhattan, and she teaches at Parsons, and he's an artist, and man, their kids are so artistically sophisticated. They're fine artists in New York, and when I hear them talk to each other, it's like I don't have no idea what they're talking about. I just know that they're a lot smarter than me.
My mom, she's like she came from Tonga, like an island in the Pacific, and she has like no clue about any of that stuff as well. And I've told the story before, but when I was in like elementary school, we went to the MoMA, and they noticed that I was really into like art. So the chaperone lady called my mom and was like, you should really like get him into art things because he seems really driven by that. And then she told me like when I was a grown up pursuing art, she was like, oh, some lady called me when you were in elementary school. I'm like, thanks for doing
That's
nothing.
Cool.
I think there's a lot of stories like that.
Yeah. And there's the opposite too, which I'm like, damn, like I forget who we were talking to. Someone was like, oh yeah, my mom, she put me in like all these art things and let me like explore which direction I wanted to go. I'm like, damn, that must be nice. Like,
but you know what? I don't know. Because it's like there's so much like just being in that kind of process, like being like taught, instructed, tutored versus like trying to figure stuff out on your own. That's why I say like, I mean, it's super idealistic and maybe kind of like a hippie thing to say, but like I really do wish. I mean, I would really just like say like fuck it all and just figure it out on my own. You know? It's just more fun, and it's what I've been trying to figure out like in my like old age or whatever since school. It's like this like I don't know, like second adolescence or something.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. You have that perspective. I mean, I think the exploration and just sort of blazing your own path is really, I think it's key. Honestly, I think it's what creates our own unique voice. And I mean, not to flash back to knock art school, but I think that's one of the problems with art school is that everyone sort of drinks the Kool-Aid, and then there's sort of a homogenous element to how the art looks. So, I really respect people who've gone through that classical training and who can sort of pull back and refocus their efforts that way.
I didn't know they were going to have Kool-Aid at art school, so that's how I stayed in.
Yeah,
that was super tasty.
But yeah, I mean, also like when I was a kid, and still probably a good amount to this day, is like whenever anyone tells me to do something, or even like anything in school, I was always like pushing against it. Like, so if my mom ever actually put me into like an art class or something when I was a kid, I'd probably end up pushing against that and saying like, I don't want to do art.
Right. Yeah. And then you'd be like labeled as like a problem child. Or, yeah. And it creates this like domino effect of well-meaning people, teachers, instructors, whatever.
Yeah.
But the kid themselves, they get just jostled around like, who am I? I don't understand.
Right.
Yeah. And it's I don't have anything against, like, I think there's actually a lot of interesting experimental schools all around the country, and they almost all operate sort of like almost like art schools in the sense that it's all younger children kind of congregating and choosing what they want to do, and no grades, just passion and resources, right? Because when you don't have resources, you really do feel like you're kind of just weak, like you don't have options, like the world's against you and things like that. Even when there are options, like even now, like I think there's probably a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to do something creative, and Google's here, Wikipedia's here, Instagram's here, and still feel like the world's against you, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
that mindset is something that is either developed or maybe kind of crumpled in the school program, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it really does kind of change the way you think about things.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that like the artist mindset is very like different than like the person that pursues something like academic, like mathematics or something like that, where the mindset of like an artist, like it's like a well-known thing that artists are pretty good procrastinators at times, and I'm not trying to like lump everyone into like a group, but I think artists in general, like there's like and just people in general, like there's certain things that creative people do or the way they learn that just isn't the way that schools end up like formatting whatever they, setting up their systems to teach kids how to do what, art or whatever you want to call it. Or,
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think there's like it definitely works for a certain type of person, whether they're artistic or not. I think you can have a great artist come out of art school or art training or whatever. It's more just a personality, right?
Yeah.
And I think that schools work for people where schools work for, and everybody else, they're the problem, and they start to internalize that, I think. You know what I mean? And they're the problem, and it's nothing about the structure or the system or whatever prevailing like ideologies at play. You're just it's like, it's super cheesy, but it's like, like when Neo is like wakes up from the Matrix or whatever, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
I keep having like those kinds of moments just like in day-to-day life,
right.
and it makes me kind of like bitter, like it makes me kind of like bitter and a little angry, and kind of like, when someone's kind of like done you wrong, like unwittingly, they didn't mean to, but you just realize, oh shit, like they really screwed me over or whatever.
Right.
So
bitterness towards art school, would you say? Or
yeah, but art schools happens because of humanity. You know what I mean? Like just people just trying to figure stuff out, trying to make a dollar.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very profitable, etc.
I see. Yeah.
So if you could, what did your 11-year-old self sort of visualize the future Steve Kim artist being? What you like? Do you recall having any sort of preconceived ideas of what life was going to be like when you were a working artist, or
bad poetry?
It's actually I don't know about specifically 11, but it's surprisingly similar to now, because around that age is when I started to get into Photoshop stuff. Dabbling into, I was really into like Jurassic Park and Lawnmower Man when 3D first came out. Like, this is amazing, the potential of this, blah blah blah.
Lawnmower Man?
Yeah, it was like one of the first like 3D movies when 3D was actually not a thing. Like Lawnmower Man. Yeah, I think that was the one that I saw. Not Tron. Jurassic Park, The Abyss, Terminator 2. That when computer graphics really started coming into play, and it wasn't that I was interested in the effects themselves, but what what you could do with it, its utility as an art form. And I was pretty good about, picking up Photoshop, but I got intimidated with the 3D stuff, and it was super slow. You're on like a Pentium 133. Right. It's taking like 8,000 minutes to render one like tiny pixel. And it just felt bad. And, in retrospect, I could have made it work for me, like figured it out, but I didn't have that mentality of, well, I can just like, do all the tutorials. They didn't have tutorials back then, but I could have read the manual. I could have gone to the library. Could have done this or that, or just click every button in the thing. Right. But I ended up getting all the software, doing a little bit of stuff, but then kind of going back to drawing and painting.
Right.
But it's something that to this day keeps coming back. I keep reinstalling this software and different processes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's definitely different, because for me, like Photoshop and all that thing, I use it, but it's always like a here I go again, because but standing in front of a screen and working in those like in that realm, I just always have, it's just not for me. But that's kind of cool to hear someone else's point of view on that, because I get like, I don't know if you get it, working is like my shoulders just start getting like super tense and all that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's definitely intimidating because even though there's overlap between software,
Mm-hmm.
the moment you're going into a different area, just that feeling of trepidation, even though I know I've been here before and I can
Right.
figure it out, but still just putting it off or whatever. And it's just something that's been kind of haunting me for my most of my life. And it's like lately I'm trying to really like, okay, let's really kind of address this, because I don't think it's gonna go away. It just keeps haunting me. Yeah. I mean, I love drawing and painting, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
the way I paint is very, like, I would say, quote unquote, like intuitive and stuff.
Yeah, I can tell that.
But there's also this part of me that just really, I don't know if I like it, but it's like obsessive about like procedures or
I see.
processes and details and things like that.
Yeah.
Like I used to get really stressed out as a teenager because I had this hand-me-down car that it wouldn't start, and it wouldn't start because I didn't drive enough, but I didn't know that, and so I just had this constant car starting anxiety.
Yeah.
And this fear of car batteries, right? They just intimidate me for whatever reason, and I still don't drive a lot, but I have a car I like, and so eventually I just researched everything there is about car batteries and car battery maintenance and car battery tenders, and I have a solar car battery charger thing and a lithium car starter in case it doesn't start.
That's funny.
And what I realized was that going through that process was that not only was the anxiety relieved, I actually enjoyed all that. It's like the anxiety was telling me something,
Right.
And so software and processes are a lot like that. It's not like this love. It's like this kind of like,
Itch you have to scratch.
yeah. And if I ignore it, it'll come back. But if I address it, I end up like finding a use of a satisfaction. I have the little like lithium car starter in my trunk, and every time I see it, it's like, it's so handsome. It just makes me happy.
Same. Yeah.
It's very weird. I don't like
awesome.
having too many things, but it's like, okay, you're okay. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that exists within your artwork to some degree too. I mean, I like the fact that your painting is highly intuitive, but also very sort of thought out and has sort of a methodical element to it as well. I feel like it's sort of the best of both worlds, or at least you bringing elements from both those sort of polar degrees into some middle point,
Yeah. So the foundational thing would be the figure. You know what I mean? I mean, sometimes I think about drawing flowers or painting flowers and things like that. But the figure it's just a good place to start, and part of it for me is like, because figures are people, and we basically relate to each other as people, right? We're not like, yeah, I'm really into dating this, plant or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Some people might be into that, but
yeah, some people are really into like Statue of Liberty statues, like miniature ones. Like I saw this lady wanted to marry it or something.
Right.
Sorry, I was like, I had to do something on the computer, and I came back. And it was a very weird.
Josh, have you ever dated a plant?
She broke my heart. Yes. Wait, you guys are talking about dating plants? I heard the last thing. Okay, sorry, I was like trying to pull up an image, but the last thing I heard was that you were thinking about painting flowers, and then it sounded like you were going towards, but then I don't.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like all kinds of art, but just personally, just drawn to not just the figure, but anything that relates to the figure. So, like clothing, and anything like if the figure is in close proximity to. So, I'm not too into tables, but if the person's like holding onto the table, then the table becomes interesting because it's relating to the figure.
I see.
And there's some kind of some sort of relationship between.
You really like to meld the edges between figures or figure and an object too. I've noticed everything's frequently sort of like packed together in some way.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's at least like a first option. At some point you start noticing yourself kind of doing the same moves,
Right.
And so you get a little irritated and look for something else. but like even something like that, though, like this idea of merging, there's a lot
Yeah.
of different ways to go about that. You could literally combine it. You can make it in a realistic fashion or more of a 2D way. Just like, just that one like idea you could work on for a lifetime, like some people
Right.
do, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, like, I think at least having something kind of like set up against each other, like one thing set up against another thing, so you can compare the two,
Right.
and they can kind of like bounce back and forth,
Right.
Um,
The relationship between the human being and the object that. And are you trying to tell a story through that, or?
no, not really. So with these recent paintings, they're all based on films, but
Mhm.
it's almost all just whatever I find kind of like visually interesting. With possession, I am interested in the story because this couple, they're so whacked out, like they're
Mhm.
crazy,
Right.
but in this really weird, beautiful way, right?
Right.
But generally, no, don't really have a story or anything.
What about the dogs? I noticed there's a lot of dogs in your paintings.
Because I used to have a greyhound.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So dogs, my nephews, family, sometimes random people.
Hmm.
Part of that is because they all came from snapshots. When people are just hanging out, and when people are just hanging out, they all sit, move in weird, unpredictable ways.
Yeah.
And so if it's like if I have to think of a pose, it kind of hurts my brain,
Right.
because it's like when you start multiplying numbers, it gets really big.
Right.
So if this shoulder can like rotate in
Right.
these many degrees, and this elbow, like but if you have a photo and you like the photo, you can kind of work what's the word, retroactively. So you like the photo, but you don't know why. But as you draw or as you paint it, like in my case where I draw and or paint, not draw, always draw everything out, then I start noticing things because drawing speed is much slower.
Right.
And much more attentive, and like, oh, okay, this is what drew me to it,
Do you ever have trouble like transitioning, like because sometimes I look at a photo and I'm like, oh, that I really enjoy, the hand or something in that like natural position, but trying to capture that through like my drawing, I'll fail at it because there's a difference between photograph and graphite or whatever.
It sometimes takes some work. It's not something that I think a casual observer would notice the difference between a drawing that's working for me or not.
Right.
But it's just like it's like if I go in with enough like kind of attention and care and like observation, then usually it'll take less time and maybe less line work and stuff like that. But it'll come out better. And that becomes a better starting point. Like, and at some point, because I'm not like rendering anything out. It's all mostly line work, and that the graphic nature of line work, it starts to. It literally is its own image as soon as you start it, right? Separate from the photo, and that drawing then starts to suggest different things. Just like how the photo was talking to you, now this drawing of the photo is talking to you, and the drawing at some point there's a transition where the drawing is speaking more and is also kind of irritating you more because it's too realistic, it's too much like something I've seen before. And that's why I like color pencil so much, because just the color of graphite, like I have no problem with it, but I also have a problem with it, you know what I mean? It looks like a drawing, it looks like something I've seen before.
So are the photographs, well, first of all, are the photographs taken, you said it's sort of just casual, or the subjects aren't really aware that they're being photographed. Are you taking those pictures with the idea of painting them, or are those just pre-existing photos that you decided to make paintings out of?
Grad school days, it was I was more into photography back then, so I always had a camera on me before the iPhone and stuff. So a lot of it was I was just my friend at the time, we'd always just kind of walk around and we'd always like point at things and be like, that would make such a good painting. And so it's like those kinds of moments where you're just walking around and I'll see the way a couple sits together on a chair or something and take a picture and things like that. I also work the other way where I'll usually like family photos. My
Do you ask the people like because I always think the same thing. Is that like the other day I saw like this family in a Trader Joe's and they looked like a Norman Rockwell painting and I was like, God, but like the modern day version, it was like the girl was like tattooed and
oh yeah,
they were like very like I was like, oh, that's like a cool like that would be a cool photograph that you could turn into a painting, but I'm just always like, I don't want to like take a picture of them with their like kids.
Right.
Like,
Right. Creepy.
Yeah. So
well, I think these days it'd be a lot easier with the iPhone. You
Yeah.
know,
Sneak one off. Huh?
Yeah. Versus like a big old honking.
Yeah,
display kind of
right.
thing.
Right.
But in the end, I those are rare. 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20. It was mostly, hanging around with family or friends
Right.
and things like that.
Hmm.
And then for the portraits, initially I just asked Tumblr people to send me photos, and then I started following certain people and started contacting them,
Mhm.
and a few, so right now it's like a mix between, like if I'm in the area and they agreed to a photo shoot, I'll do that, and if not, they can send me some JPEGs, and if I find something I like, then I work with that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen that on like Instagram or something where they'll do like a portrait contest thing or something where they just like do an open call to like all their followers and they say like, oh, everyone send me like a portrait you'd want drawn. I'm gonna pick my favorite one and then draw it.
Yeah. So initially it was kind of like that,
Okay.
because it's just like Tumblr social followers. It's like gee whiz, right?
Yeah.
So it was really novel for me. But there's a downside in that it's just you get a bunch of pictures you don't want, and it's,
Right.
it's
Right.
kind of like awkward.
Yeah. People might
Yeah.
get hard feelings. That you
Yeah,
don't pursue theirs.
yeah. So it's just easier to be rejected than to reject,
Yeah.
basically.
right.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Huh.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
yeah.
That's funny. So the new work that you do that's based off of this movie, do you feel like a responsibility to kind of represent the movie in some subtle way or whatever?
Not really.
No.
I do feel a little weird about it because it's just like it's sort of like if when you see artists like draw like Audrey Hepburn or something, it's like the
Right.
photograph,
Right.
So every once in a while I'll pick a photo that I actually see on social media
Mhm.
and then contact them. Can I draw this, etc. And it's not the greatest feeling, but usually I'm happy. I'm still happy with the final piece. It's just a little bit of that kind of skeezy feeling. And it's the same with these film-based paintings, because some people will recognize, like this movie especially, for some reason, like it's just very visually iconic. A lot of people recognize it, and they're like, "I love this film" or whatever.
Right.
And
Why
like,
do they sound so creepy?
well, this movie attracts a certain kind.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry. They said I love this film because it's very iconic. The film, so they'll see like a painting you did and notice that it's attached to the movie, I think is what you were saying.
Yeah. Sometimes I think you said sometimes it makes you feel uncomfortable when you're producing an image.
Yeah. So that's like the compromise. And so I was like waffling, like afterwards, do I even want to do this again? Like it was fun for this one time, but did I want to make whenever I try
see.
something new, I want to think like, do I want to continue this as a series?
Yeah, for sure.
To add it to my practice, because I've got a lot of things up in the air already, and adding new modes is complicating.
Yeah.
But so it's a conflicted feeling, for sure.
I see.
So this painting on the screen right now, is this from the movie?
Yeah, that's the movie. It's a scene where so they're the two main protagonists, and they're like husband and wife, but they hate each other and they love each other, and it's this very strange scene in the cafe where they're like sitting at like 90 degrees away from each other and still talking to each other. It's a
right.
Really?
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I just like some of the angles, and that's a situation where like I don't really care about the environment or tables or things like that, but because they're interfacing with them and relate to the characters,
Right.
and even the background with the perspective lines.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
because
all like
I'm drawing everything in, then I can decide what's kind of playing with these other shapes and forms.
Right. Yeah. There seems like a huge amount of tension in this
Absolutely.
piece. It just seems like well, pretty much what you said, just that they seem to hate each other, or that there's like this like I don't know, this like struggle for power or something. And I don't know, it's also cool that he's like in the, I don't know why there's like so much shadow on him. I'm assuming that's why it was shot that way. But
No, that's like stuff I added.
oh really?
Yeah, he's like in a suit. But it wasn't working out for me. And like, when you get frustrated, you just like start scribbling stuff.
Yeah, for sure. You start figuring out how to like change things to make it look cool still.
Yeah,
but,
just try to make it work.
Yeah.
Make it work.
I mean, I'm
Tim Gunn, shout out.
Yeah.
make it work. I'm curious. I mean, in some areas you have it really sort of explicitly rendered out, and other areas are a little more stark. Do you sort of load a bunch into the painting and then or into the image and then sort of remove things that you don't like out of it, or do you push in certain areas and just sort of lay off in others? Is it preconceived, or do you do it like kind of a reduction?
I would say the first stage is drawing everything out, even stuff that I don't really care about, until I hit that point of like annoyance or fatigue or something. Because like the initial drawings of the initial stage of any drawing, doesn't matter what. It's just like it's just fun. It's just fun finding the image and having it sort of like come to life. It's like my baby or whatever. Yeah. But then you're like kind of tired of it.
Yeah, then your baby grows up and starts telling you you're a punk.
Yeah, exactly. It's like out with you. And then that's when that's generally when I'll start to want to edit and just think about things. These large pieces, they're pretty representational. They're pretty narrative. That's unlike most of my other work.
Right.
And it's just like I really don't know why, because I don't really like super narrative work. So it's not the intention.
How dare you?
But the thing, if you do, but the thing is, there's this other problem where, say, I like the scene, the more abstract it becomes, the more it changes, the more it starts telling a different story.
Right.
Like you can say that, abstraction is non-narrative, but if like his head's like a cube or whatever,
right?
Then it'd be like, what does a cube mean?
Right.
People will infer all sorts of things.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's like kind of unavoidable.
On a side note, I really love your voices that you put to the guys that. Also on this painting specifically, like this is probably like my favorite part is like his hand and his knee. I just like the detail of like the knee, just because that's just like. I mean, I just like those kind of little. I just like cloth pretty much. And
no, I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, the folds.
And then I just love like the tension in his hand. It's like it looks like he's gripping the table.
Yeah, but not with all his fingers, just like 3 of his fingers.
And it's just like, and then her hands are almost like the opposite. Like he's it looks like he's holding on and like in like a very like tension driven way, and hers is like a fiddling of the fingers, kind of
fumbling nervously.
Right. Yeah.
That section of the painting, like the hands and the cloth work, I really really enjoy that. That's awesome.
Thanks. One thing is and I hate to be that guy, but like there's a lot of white in the image. That's not the canvas; it's paint.
Oh, okay.
And so it's something that you have to see in person.
I see.
Right? It's hard to like
I
literally forget which parts did what, but I know I did them for a reason. So every line has like every edge is like taken into consideration. I think on an Instagram image or even as a printout, you can't really. Not that I care that much in the first place, but
Yeah, I mean. Yeah.
There's a lot of paint on there, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the size?
A lot
of
of white paint.
What's the size of this piece?
60 by 72
Oh,
inches.
yeah, that's a big piece. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely can't tell from the picture. That's definitely one of the flaws about Instagram and social media in general. As an artist, there is something lacking when you go and you see a painting in its physical state. You usually are like, whoa, that's
Not what I expected at all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I've had occasions where I've made little like 8x10 pieces and posted it to Instagram, and then people will see it and they'll be like, "I thought this was like a 3-foot painting." You know?
Right. Yeah.
And you're saying this one's huge.
Yeah.
And to me, I thought that was like a small one. I was like, maybe like a 8x11 or something.
That's generous.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
For sure. Yeah. So you have no problem painting large. I mean, you're gonna fly through your mural. For sure.
That's actually pretty cool. That it has like this feeling of almost like that it's drawn out.
Mm-hmm.
I really like how his nose is illuminated too in the white. I mean, that plays a real nice note right there.
But yeah, that's awesome. Let's go to a different one that's like more. I really like this one here. I don't know if you want to. Is that one also from the movie?
No, this is an older archive. It was for an illustration for a website.
Oh, nice.
What was the website?
Polygon.com. They're a gaming site, but
Okay.
way back in the day when Bitcoin like started like making the news,
Uh-huh.
they did an article, and so I had to do stuff about Bitcoin. And this
I see.
this guy is he's like an economist that worked for Valve. They're a video game company.
Okay.
So they had in-game currency, and he was a real economist that was trying to figure out like in-game currency systems or whatever.
Did they pay you in Bitcoin?
I wish they did.
Yeah,
Oh my
right?
god,
Yeah.
I would be so
Yeah,
rich.
he wouldn't be here right now.
Like I knew, like I had, like
He might be here, but he might have flown in his helicopter.
yeah, totally. Yeah. It actually does. Like when I found like I just restored them or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I was just so angry with myself because this was like years ago,
Right.
and I read the whole article. I thought I made artwork, but it just didn't occur to me buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I thought I was like, what is this bullshit?
Yeah, exactly.
But whatever.
So did they give you direction in terms of what they wanted the rendering to look like? I mean, it's realistic looking, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a flattering rendering because it's in these kind of like cool green and blue colors, and it's sort of rendered somewhat roughly. So what was their direction, or what did they ask for this image?
Well, it's different for every art director. This one was with Warren Schultes, and he was very. It was like one of my first clients, and he was just super cool because his background was in fine art.
Okay.
And so he was interested in things that weren't necessarily like super literal magazine illustration type things, which I didn't know how to do and didn't really want to do anyways. I still don't really. So yeah, he was. It was pretty loose. It was pretty loose, and these days, if I do get a prompt, usually they already know the kind of thing that I want, or I sent them the kind of work that I want to do.
Yeah.
Which is very like vague and kind of loose, and like so that when I send them thumbnails, they look retarded, right? They're just like, oops, sorry. I mean, they're bad. They're like. I don't know. How do I get out of this? They're not good. My illustration instructors would be very disappointed. But because it's more about like this idea, like a few times when I felt like I could get away with it, I'd write out my idea to them. Like I'm thinking about so and so and so, and if they're cool with it, then I do it, and I can always edit after the fact, anyways.
Right.
So,
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. Is this watercolor?
So this is final is a digital, and then it was let me remember, it was originally it's a drawing, and then I scanned that in, I painted on top of it a little bit. This is like a short deadline, scanned that in, and then just Photoshop stuff.
Okay, so you have your sort of illustration hustle. Do you get many people reaching out for commission? I don't know if you could call it fine art since it's a commission, but paintings that are more consistent with your fine art, but they'll maybe want you to tweak it in one direction or another. And do you do that sort of work, or do you like to sort of keep those two worlds a little more separate?
You mean like fine art commission?
Yeah. If someone says, "Hey, I like this style of this fine art painting," but maybe
Oh no,
you wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Well, it's not that I just don't get them, but I also I don't think I would want to. I did have one, and I just put it off for years.
Shoveled to the bottom of the deck.
I was like, I just couldn't I went pretty far with it, and every time I just didn't know what to do. So
Okay.
Was it something where where they were just like paint my family or something?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, have you seen my work?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Your babies are gonna look like
Yeah.
freaks.
Yeah, that's
They'll be beautiful,
Yeah.
but they'll be freaky.
Yeah.
You know?
I learned that's the key email you got to send when someone reaches out
Yeah.
for a commission. You got to write back and say, "Have you looked through my portfolio? Do you know my style? Are you sure this is what you want?"
I just always say no, like right away. They say like, "Oh, I'd love you to paint my family," and I'd say like, "Yeah, I don't do that. Like that's not what I do. I'm sorry."
Yeah, I wouldn't
like
do
there's
that.
people that do that and they do it well, and I would like definitely suggest going that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super, I mean, it's a certain like representational alla prima painting,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. I think really works well.
Right.
The more weird, like even like slightly abstract, you're
Yeah.
gonna start getting into when it like involves people's faces.
Yeah,
like,
I've
this
experienced
eyebrow,
that.
like what is this? Like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is not me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dangerous territory painting
Yeah.
people's faces.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
for
is.
sure.
Yeah,
I painted someone and they never spoke to me again, man. It's true. Yeah. Yeah, I sent them the
Did
painting
you
like
kill them? Or?
no, I just sent them a picture of the painting like, "Hey, I finished it." It was a person I worked with.
Oh,
and-
for real? Like
Yeah, she was-
literally happened.
Yeah, she was really cool. She's like, "Oh, she came and did a photo shoot and everything," and then I did the painting and I sent it to her, and I never heard back. And then, I reached out to her a while later, and then I never heard back again. I never heard from her again. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe she didn't hate the painting. Maybe she was abducted by aliens. But no,
you're gonna see her on like a milk carton, like.
yeah, exactly. So that's when I learned don't do portraits.
Right. I mean, like I think it just depends on whoever the client is.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit harder, I think, because with commission work, you're dealing directly with the client. At least with most illustration, you're working with the art director,
Right.
and he's working for his company or her company.
Right.
So it doesn't have that like one-to-one weirdness
Yeah,
kind
the
of,
intermediary
Yeah, I see.
really
Yeah.
helps. Yeah.
Because then they don't really care.
Yeah.
They just want you to make sure you're on time and it
Right.
sort of works. Doesn't make them look bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So I
cool.
like illustration. I mean, I really have no problem with like the commercial side of art.
Mhm.
It's just it's more about just how can I make it work for me, and
Right.
so I can be somewhat happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. We don't want you like
Not too
thinking-
much happiness, just a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. We want you to scratch that itch and not get overwhelmed with the what'd you call it earlier? What you just like hate if it's not like the car battery analogy you had. But whatever. I don't know where we left off, so we're gonna just.
You were saying something really eloquent.
I was saying some gibberish. I think I was trying to do a callback and it didn't. I didn't remember it, so I just gibber
Well,
jabber.
I have a horrible memory, so
Yeah,
and I'm always
good.
like on tangents. So like how did I get on car batteries? I don't know, but it's relevant somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tangents are sort of the nature of this podcast.
Yeah, so it works out perfectly.
All right, cool.
Yeah. We should be called Tangent or something. Oh, well, there's already a podcast called like Tangentially Speaking or something like
Oh, really?
Biter.
that. But yeah, so the show is happening at
No Wave.
No Wave, yeah.
Yeah.
No Wave Gallery in LA.
Downtown, near I think either in Little Tokyo or pretty close to it.
Okay.
Nice, and you're gonna have huge. That's this Saturday, which will be
April 28th.
28th.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So, have you showed in this gallery before?
Yeah, it was they had a big group show I think last year.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of the No Wave roster. So Emilio Villalba was there,
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Seagrove.
Right.
I think Mark Tennant. You were talking with Emilio about his instructor, Mark Tennant, and two of his paintings, Phil Hale.
Yeah, I know Daniel. He's cool. I asked him to be on the podcast, but he's like too shy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just totally
Yeah, he's super
understandable.
nice.
Yeah, so I was like, I get it. But yeah, those are amazing artists. Like,
Yeah, they have a really, they really hustle and show a lot of cool art, and they do a lot of really interesting community based things, workshops and teaching things, and a lot of music stuff. Justin used to do or still does a lot of music related stuff.
mm-hmm.
But like picked up the brush. And well, Justin was originally an illustrator artist, then did a lot of music stuff, and now is more about art again. So, yeah,
that's cool. There is a weird connection between those two mediums, or whatever you want to call it.
I'm curious to know. I just learned that you're that you currently live in Mississippi, so I kind of wanted to touch on that and see if you could tell us how you ended up starting in LA and ended up in Mississippi.
Right. So that's like part of like that whole post-grad school meltdown or whatever. Or not like crisis or melt exit. Yeah, melt up. I melted my way up.
Yeah, I like that.
I had this idea of, I kind of wanted to get away. Do you know what I mean? Because I felt like, especially after grad school, like when you're in school, you can kind of sustain yourself with these kind of like delusions of grandeur. You know, like Gagosian is going to call you the moment they see your grad show, and you're gonna be, you know, like,
you be made.
Yeah, like what color Ferrari do I want?
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And then
all of the colors.
So that doesn't happen, but life, you know, continues.
Right.
All these like grad students' hearts just break.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, just by Civic. But you know, I still like painting, still like making art. It's always just been something that's been a part of my life. It's hard to, even when I'm not painting, I'm thinking about what can I learn or adapt to the practice. So I was like, LA didn't really work out for me. And my friend, Zach Tudor, he was running he still runs an art blog, Supersonic Art. We did an interview a long time ago, and we just kind of became friends. And he was like, "Hey, I have a room," and I was like, "Okay, cool."
Nice.
The price sounds right, and it's towards the east, away from LA, away from like my failures.
I see.
And
fresh start, huh?
Yeah, and I'm really like hermetic, and I'm really a hermit in general. Like I like to, you know, just chill out by myself.
So are you in the country right now, or are you in a city? Or?
It's in the city of Oxford, so it's one zip code. It's like a suburban space, but it's actually a little disappointing in the sense that I wish it was like more like out in the desert, you know, or something. Actually, I don't know if I really want that, but it would be cool. But yeah, if you drive any direction, like 1 mile, you're in the country.
I see.
Yeah. And I wanted, you know, and I had these kind of like ideas of like eventually moving to the east, maybe if not New York, then something cheaper around it.
Right.
But I kind of just liked it in Oxford, and I was doing a lot of different things, figuring a lot of different things out.
That's cool. How are the mosquitoes out there? I always hear Mississippi is like brutal when it comes to like getting bit up by mosquitoes. That's like one of my reasons I don't ever want to go there. Well, not go there, but live there, I guess.
Well, where we're at, it's okay if you go by the lake or something. Then yeah, it'll get like bodies of water. You're gonna get bit. I'm just thinking about it. Makes the accent comes out a little bit. It would be really deep if I hung out with actual like Mississippians.
Yeah, really snap into it. Huh?
Yeah. Like even when I'm like in the like at the cashiers or something, you know, I'll be like, it's kind of like a little drawl, kind of like creeps in, like, what's going on? I'm Asian.
Yeah, I was going to ask you,
Korean.
What's your experience being Asian living in Mississippi? I mean, I'm sure you probably come across some interesting moments.
Actually, it's pretty relaxed.
Is it?
I'm just used to it. I mean, I just go to like Kroger, which is like the grocery store there. The UPS store to send out artworks.
You're not interacting
I'm really
too
tight
much,
with like, you know, the UPS store people. Sending another painting.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, no, nothing weird. But I don't really interact with anybody there really. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's in the South, so generally everyone's like super nice, and it does take a little getting used to coming back to the West Coast. Even though people always say, "Oh, New York is really hard and LA is really soft," but there is a kind of like a hardness sometimes with LA culture and
for
kind of a
sure.
meanness, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How the Southern hospitality is real then.
Oh yeah, for real. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
even for like some
Darker toned skin.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, just like me, right?
Some of that isn't probably the norm, or I've never been, so I've no concept of the people there. I mean, I'm assuming people are good and bad everywhere.
I experienced the same thing when I was there. I mean, I haven't spent a ton of time there, but I was there many years ago, and I thought, well, I mean, I'm a white guy, so it's smooth sailing for me. But no, I experienced everyone being extremely friendly and welcoming, and sort of that Southern hospitality stereotype being pretty consistent with what I experienced there. But
Right, like I have a vague memory of like an uneasiness of this whatever idea I had of the South. But now it's more like, when we get back, we should like Yelp it up and see what's going on, like barbecue wise or whatever.
Yeah.
Like in the boonies or smaller towns and things like that. It just sounds fun.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Whereas
for
before
sure.
I would have been like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just like I don't know. It's like almost. I feel like almost every idea or thought you have, it just popped in there. So one day,
Right.
whether it was true or not,
Uh-huh.
and art related and not, So that was definitely one of those things where like, I don't know why I thought these things that I just did. And,
Right.
Uh-huh.
And I'm
it's
sure
different
there's
now.
some truth to it in certain pockets.
Oh sure. I mean,
for
yeah. I
sure.
mean, it's still America.
Yeah.
It's still real life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But
So I imagine you have a nice big studio. Mississippi can't be that expensive to rent a
it's
space.
it's affordable.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're painting in a mansion.
I just hang out on the chandelier, straight to my studio on my plastic slide.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man, you don't have a train like.
It's too slow. I need to get I can wake up. I gotta just paint.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, which color Ferrari should I drive today?
I always wanted to have the Silver Spoons train. Am I dating myself here? Do you guys ever watch that show?
No.
All right, edit this part out. Ricky
so-
Schroeder, for real?
So in 1942,
People, is this
go
mic on?
1942, there was a TV show.
I've heard of it.
Oh
Silver
yeah,
Spoon.
it was about a rich kid. He had a train in his mansion, and he just cruise around from room to room on his train. It was pretty cool.
Was he paralyzed or?
No, he was rich, man.
Okay.
Anyways,
Gosh, and he grew up to be the president. Plot twist.
let's not talk about that.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Okay. But yeah, that's cool. So you have a pretty good sized studio then?
It's just modest. It's like a pretty big like bedroom basically, and I have a storage space. So,
So it's where you live, you work. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Well, see, I wonder about that because I was just talking to a bunch of people. I went to an art show in Oakland last night, and it's in sort of a place where you can rent studio space, but there's also a gallery attached to it.
Right.
And so I was,
What's it called again?
Fault Line Art
Fault
Space.
Line,
Yeah.
that's right.
So I was sort of talking to some of the artists that have studios there, and just discussing. For me, I work at home too, and I have a real issue with productive procrastination at home. It's like the dishes always need to be done. I could always take a 30-minute shower. There's always
there's
some
no other kind.
yeah, exactly. If it's sunny, then it's like I'm looking out in the backyard thinking, man, why don't I just go sit out there and read a book for a little while, Do you experience that or?
For me, it works out like because I've had studio spaces, for school, for example, and it's okay. I think it depends probably more on like you were saying, like where if you like kind of like to be around like-minded people
Uh-huh.
and that energy that you get, right? Whereas for me, I would sacrifice a lot to be alone and not have a shared studio space.
I see.
Like 4-to-1 space wise. Like I'll just draw smaller,
Right.
which is literally what I did, right? And
Yeah.
and just try to make it work.
Yeah, for sure. I'm exactly the same way. Like the dishes for me are gonna pile. Like
Well, the other thing about working from home is like you can paint and then take a break and
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
some dishes.
and
Right.
wait for it to dry.
and paint some and take a break. Put some bread in the oven, paint some, pop it out. It's
Right,
good.
yeah, that's
Wait, are
true.
you baking bread too?
I got in this weird like bread baking phase. The YouTube's
awesome.
right, you know.
Yeah.
I like YouTube some gaming stuff, and then I see a loaf of bread, and that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite loaf?
Do you have a yeast culture? You
I don't do starters, but I thought about it. But I feel like just instant yeast, just fermenting for a long time, plenty of flavor. I'm not gonna make a bakery, but and I feel like
Never say never.
I think there's a little bit of hipster starter culture, you know, where it's like, oh, this culture, this starter has been in my family for years, you know, generations.
Yeah, they have like 100-year-old cultures or something.
Yeah.
wow.
So I was like, this. I mean, I don't want to. Bakers, please don't email me.
Yeah.
I respect your.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool though. So you're making sourdoughs?
I'm not fermenting that long, so like fermenting for like a day or so. Like
Huh.
no need, a lot of water, high hydration. I've only baked like 10 loaves,
Hey,
but between like 3 and 5, I was like, whoa, artisanal bread
yeah,
for a
sure.
quarter. It's cool.
That is cool. I'm teaching myself woodworking, and that's literally how I started. Was like YouTube videos. I'd like click on one, I'm like, oh, that's cool little trick, because I make my own like my own wood panels and framing for that.
Oh, nice.
And so I would learn little tricks here and there, and then I just got obsessed with it. And now my studio is like 80% woodworking shop, and I have like a little nook for my painting. But yeah, I mean, going back to the home studio. I don't know. I have to. For me, it's almost like I neglect. I'm doing the opposite of Leon. I'm like neglecting everything in my house and just to paint or stay in my studio and do something in there.
Yeah.
But
Man, my wife kicks my ass when she gets home if the house ain't clean. So you know, that's some
Literally.
factor. No, it's cool, but
I was wondering how you got that black eye the other day.
no, it's cool. I mean, you know, sometimes I enjoy being in my studio, and sometimes it feels like it's the last place I want to be. I mean, it depends on the day, you know. Definitely, you know, if I think about all the hours I've spent standing in the same spot of my life, it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure.
You gotta mix it up some. But no, I feel you guys. I mean, there's definitely, you know, there's an upside to being at home. It's like, yeah, you could throw a chicken in the oven for dinner and, you know, whatever, you know, so.
How'd you know?
Yeah.
And then the fresh bread, and then
Yeah.
boom, you got a delicious chicken sandwich.
Yeah, it's just personality stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
I've never had a studio away from my home, so maybe I'm romanticizing it, but
That always seems like the worst fit for me, specifically just because I would just end up. It's like a gym membership. I think I would just end up never using
you
it.
just be super guilty about it, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I mean, there's also the reality of like it does dictate like for me at least, because I keep things generally pretty neat, like, you know, paint wise, size, scale, those things. Like if I had to do like another batch of huge paintings with a lot of paint,
Right.
like I would want to like maybe rent a studio space for like a couple a week, however long it takes, and do it that way.
I see.
Just
So-
because otherwise it's like it's rough.
Creatively, would you say you thrive in organized spaces then? Or does your
Oh yeah,
studio
yeah, my dream is like just like a empty white cube where there's like no visible seams, but you can just like pull out like drawers and stuff and storage
Nice.
space.
I like that.
Back to the Matrix.
You know, just like just blink white. Like that's what I want to wake up to every day. I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work. Recessed anything is a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. We need to find you Morpheus, I think. You need to get into the Matrix as soon as possible. That sounds like a perfect fit.
Yeah, I'll learn. I'll learn like the construction stuff from YouTube too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. I don't even know if that's even now. My brain is just wandering into like, how could you make a studio that clean?
Yeah. No corners. It'd have to be like a giant circular space, kind of like the Oval Office.
No, I can't do that.
No.
I need corners, 90 degrees.
Okay.
It's a good number.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just works out. Squares and stuff. We paint on them.
Yeah. Later after this, I'll take you in a tour of my house, and you'll see my studio, and then your head will explode.
Yeah. That's the opposite of what you're talking about.
It's like a huge mess right now because I was doing all my last minute stuff for this show this last Saturday, and I was framing like crazy.
Oh yeah.
So
No, don't get me wrong. Like once you're in like that work mode, like even just like framing, I'll have to frame 30 pieces, and by the time it's done, it's like explosion.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
yeah, that's how my studio is right now. It was just cleaned,
Yeah.
and now it's back to chaos.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hate it actually. After the shows, usually I do like a big clean, and I try to like get myself back into like, oh, now I love my studio, and try to keep it as clean as possible for as long as I can. But
I feel like the day after an art opening is always the same. It's like you're hungover and you just walk into your studio and it's like, fuck, I guess I'll start cleaning this up.
yeah, I don't know how you are. You pretty good after we went to Emilio's studio? I think a week after he got rid of his work, and it was so nice in there. I was like, this is beautiful. How do you get it to be this way all the time?
Yeah, pretty good. Like, in movies when there's like the guy that like places like the postcard aligning with like the corner of the table or whatever weirdo person.
Yeah.
That's me. I literally have like touch
of the OCD.
a little bit.
Relates
Just
to
productive,
Yeah.
Like the battery phobia.
Yeah, I've some OCD, but it seems to like show itself a lot when I see how people do their artwork. Like not even like the actual finished product. When I see someone do something that I do differently, it almost like hurts my brain to watch it. I'm like
badly or like
it's badly to him because it's not the way he does it.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm like, you're doing it wrong, but they're not. They're doing it whatever way they want. I just in my head I'm like, you shouldn't do it that way. You should do it my way.
Oh, right. Yeah. I definitely see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you kind of start feeling like you're like, are we living in like what kind of like experiential spaces are we like existing in?
Yeah.
Like in my world, this looks like garbage, but you're put up on the wall and everything. So yeah.
And sometimes the outcome is great. Like the painting when it comes out, I'm like, oh, that came out really awesome. But while it's being done or whatever, I'll say like, oh man, I don't understand how you do things that way. Or even looking at paintings and you see the decisions they made and you go like, I wonder why you decided to do that way.
So you mean like creatively, like art, like painting in process stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm curious. I mean, when you look at something and you question why the artist made that decision, is that something that makes you like the painting more because you don't understand it, or
no,
it
makes
you
my
dislike it?
My brain hurt. I'm like, you shouldn't have done that. You should have done it my way. But I mean, I'm sure that I didn't go to school to, so I wasn't classically trained. So all the things I do because I just figured out, oh, I could do it this way, and it worked for me. So I'm assuming there's probably someone out there like, well, that's stupid. Why did you do it that way? So I'm not. Maybe I'm just.
It's like you're your own favorite artist.
Yeah, I'm not at all, but hopefully one day.
Well, I mean, what do you think about different styles of art that are different than yours? Like, do you like looking at abstract paintings and stuff like that?
Yeah, I love abstract. I mean, to be honest, I'm not like a Jackson Pollock fan. I don't know how you feel about Jackson Pollock, but for me, I'm like, I don't know. There's things about it. And I don't know. I don't want to go too deep. I don't want to like hate on people actually, because it's whatever. But
that's fine.
Yeah, go ahead. Hate. Do it.
I feel like I'm getting pushed to the edge of the cliff. You're like, no.
Fuck you, Jackson Pollock.
Keep going. Say what you were gonna say.
Do it.
It's drippy bullshit.
Yeah. He said it, not me. But yeah. Like, I mean, but there's this weird thing that happens where people will say like, oh, like artists I really respect, they're like, oh, I love Jackson Pollock. I'm like, I don't know, like I don't know. To me, I just don't like it, but to each their own, I guess.
I mean, what about his earlier work? Like, have you ever been to like SF Moments and that coyote painting in there and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I feel like he was a biter at that point, but no shade. Just he was kind of copying people, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I don't know if we're going on a big diss of.
Who else do you hate?
Not that many.
Give me one more
people.
artist that you hate.
One more artist.
Historical.
I hate.
Yeah, they're dead. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate this guy, Josh Lawyer.
Oh man, no.
He's not
That
dead.
guy's good, man.
He's not dead, but he's dead
super
inside.
alive.
He's dead inside, and he hates himself. Yeah, I don't know. The Jackson Pollock's usually the first one I think about. There's, I don't know. I don't. There's one thing I get annoyed about with Picasso. Even though I like Picasso's work, I think there's this weird thing where people say he was. Me and Sergio talk about it a lot, but they say like, oh, Picasso, like he could paint like super realistic, but he decided not to. And then I thought that for like a good amount of my life, and then I went back and I was thinking about it one day because my high school art teacher told me that or something, or someone told me that, and I went back and I looked at his work that was like super realistic, and I was like, it's actually not that good.
Yeah, but he was like 16 when he was painting that shit, you know.
Yeah, still not that.
You're not giving him any extra credit for that, huh?
Nah. But yeah, so me and Sergio, we've talked about it, about like, does that affect your opinion of Picasso? The fact that like, for me, that was like a big selling point, you know, when teachers would say like, oh,
It's a choice.
like he decided to, he was actually an amazing realistic painter. And then you go back and you look at his work and you go like, I mean, he was good, but I don't think he was like, because they would always, my teacher said like he was like Rembrandt, but he decided
not even close.
And then you go and you look back. I don't know if you've ever done that, or I don't know if you have any thoughts about Picasso at all.
He's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a super fan.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a Picasso museum in, I believe, Barcelona. I traveled somewhat extensively in Spain. I think it was in Barcelona. Anyways, it's interesting because
Big brag.
Yeah,
Cool,
that's a big
cool.
brag.
Cool.
I do some globe trotting, but never mind, no big deal. But the museum is interesting because they force you. You can't just walk around the museum and go wherever you want. They force you to walk through, and everything is chronological. So you start out in the first room. It's his paintings as a child, and you gradually work your way through his life. And that was pretty interesting. I mean,
You see like his rose period and blue period and all that.
yeah, exactly.
stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I dig Picasso, but he was a crazy motherfucker, dude. He was not a very nice person.
Yeah. I also think he was like a very good salesperson, which is a big part of art, I think, is like the marketing of yourself.
Yeah, I think that's
And,
huge. I mean,
and-
I think that's ultimately what dictates whether your work
Is
sells or not.
Yeah.
Like at the highest level,
Yeah.
it's really, and I feel this way about my work and myself, right? Like
Mhm.
I think, like I like my paintings and I'm glad people like them, but I think in the end it's really about, you know, whatever that person's like image in their head, right? Like
Right.
for people that really are into Pollock or Jackson Pollock, they're really into that moment in art history. They're really into those ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
They're fans of not just the work, but like all the ideas behind it,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And that's probably the most like I don't know if it's cynical, but like your I think one way to look at it is like your work is there to in a way like indoctrinate people, you know, get them
Right.
to like believe
Right,
Yeah.
right.
in your
Brainwash them.
message
Yeah,
or whatever.
Right.
But in a nice way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Join our cult, but we're friendly.
Yeah, because and to the credit of to the observer. In other words, like the observer are engaged in this creative act.
Mhm.
When they look at the painting,
Yeah.
they
Right.
see the painting in their minds a certain way that you
Mhm.
can't really that you need as an artist.
Right.
Otherwise, they're just not going to care. It's just wallpaper.
Yeah.
How do you feel about people giving you feedback at shows or trying to engage you about the content of the art? Do you generally enjoy that, or you prefer for people to just have their own opinions and leave it at that?
Doesn't really bug me.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if someone really, I mean, I think it's interesting when someone has something kind of enlightening to say, like says something or describes the work in a way that I hadn't like realized.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, you know, okay, that's cool. It's like
Mhm.
constructive, but,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
but you know, generally because I'm not like operating in this like super high end space where you
Mhm.
have like art critics and stuff writing
Right.
about your work. It's, you know, it's not like, not that that stuff is very illuminating in the end. It's still a lot of like name dropping, but
Mhm.
it's something. So
Right. Okay.
yeah.
That's cool. All right. Well, I think we're gonna slowly come to an end here, but we definitely want to shout out the show. You know, if anyone's in LA area, go to God. I'm like keep drawing a blank about this gallery. I know,
Yeah, just No Wave.
No Wave.
NOHWAVE on Instagram or nowave.co.
Yeah, and then they can find you on Steve Kim or just
STVKMCO or just search for Steve Kim.
Yeah, and we'll post it on like our social media and all that good stuff, so that people that are on our social media will just be able to find you pretty easily.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but so after this, you're gonna drive to LA and you'll be down there for a while, and then you're gonna head back to Mississippi.
Yeah, so drive back to LA tomorrow morning. Start prepping the mural stuff. Try to get that done by Saturday and back to Mississippi.
Are you going to drive back the same way you came, or are you taking a different route?
Slightly more southerly.
Okay.
We want to pass through Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gallery there, Fort Works Art, that I've worked with, so I want to check that out. And just
Nice.
just a different path.
Yeah, for sure.
Might as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. And and then after that, you have anything else coming up?
No, that's it.
No?
Yeah. There's a small show in it's a really long name. The Gene Siskel Film Center of the Chicago School Institute of Art.
That's not a name. That's a paragraph. Bro.
Yeah.
No, it was like I thought I was like when I copy pasted it or copy pasted it, it was like this can't be real. So I had to like double check it was real. It's basically
hilarious.
they're like where the School Institute of Art Chicago thing, museum thing. Their film center is also showing a lot of Asian American art, and I have like 2 pieces there. So that closes in June.
Do you get a lot of support from the Asian culture? Like,
Not really, but recently I'd say a little bit more.
that's cool.
Yeah, but I think it's probably because like I don't think my work really reads as Asian or
Right.
doesn't really dive into anything specifically culture related. So there's a lot of white people.
Yeah.
A lot of Leons in your painting.
Yeah. Hey, you could do a painting of me anytime. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Leon, for being our
Pseudo Sergio.
our cookie cutout Sergio.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize he wasn't here.
Yeah. Oh,
You guys look,
did.
sound, smell,
no.
taste the same.
Sergio's laugh is the heartbeat of this podcast. We miss you, Sergio.
But yeah, that's cool. And Leon, if you guys don't know his work, go check it out for sure. And we'll post his stuff. And you had some show yesterday, right?
Yeah, at Fault Line. It's the title of the show is "This Is Not an Art Show," and it's a surrealism show. So curated by Los Tres Amigos, which is Raul Demauries. Is that I say that right?
No idea.
Probably just completely hacked your name, Raul. Sorry about that. We even discussed the pronunciation last night. Mario Mann and Felicia Ann. So
Awesome. And yeah. So thanks for listening, guys. If you're still listening, fuck off.
oh, fuck off.
Awesome.
Cool.
That was fun.
Success.
We did it.
Yay! Yeah, that was fun and funny.
Yeah, good. I know. I like the